All right, here we go. In between client updates and waiting on Adam to get on stage at Masters USA, so I thought I'd do a Instagram live or Instagram, a YouTube live, and it was based off of a comment I had to the last video of my biggest and number one mistake. So in that video, I explained the importance of essentially not doing the compound lift first. So even though I really and truly believe getting strong at the basics is one of the best ways to put on muscle tissue, if you do that first in rotation, you aren't active, you aren't ready. In my mind, like the muscles aren't primed and ready and locked and loaded. So what I suggested doing in the video, and I listed every breakdown of every body part. So let's take legs, for example. If I'm gonna do squats and prioritize my strength on squats and really build that progressive overload, all day long I'm gonna start with lying or seated leg curls. And I'm gonna do probably 2 sets of 15 and then pyramid down the stack. So let's say set 1 of feeder is gonna be 8 reps. Set 2 of feeder will be 6. Set 3 will be 4. And then I'm ready to do my top end load, right? So for the top set, so 2 warm up, 3 feeder, and then I'm ready to go for my top set. So let's say that's the stack, and I get 9.5 reps. Perfect. Hell yeah, I did exactly what I intended and want to do. Now for the back off, I'm gonna do, let's say the stack is 150 like it is at Elite. I'm gonna drop down to probably 100 and just crush reps with perfect form. So really slow negatives, pause in the hole slightly, and then massive contraction at the top. The goal there, matching similar or close to the reps I got for the top set. So anywhere between 8 and 10 reps would be ideal, right? So then I'm gonna go over the adductor machine and do the exact same thing, right? A couple warm-ups, a few feeder to get to whatever the top end load's gonna be. So for me, typically with the Nautilus piece that we have at Elite, I'm gonna do the stack, which is 200 plus a gym pin and 1 to 3/4, depending upon my strength and where I am in my cycle, right? So once we do that, do the same thing for a back off. Drop down probably, let's say the stack was 200, or is 200 plus 2/4, so I'm looking at 250. I'll probably drop like 175-ish. Crank reps, hold the contraction, squeeze the piss out of my adductors. Then I want to look to squat. And I'm going to build up very similar to how I would where I normally did for a hard 8 to 10, right? So start with probably 1 plate, do 5 reps, just feeling it. I'm not going to waste my time with a bunch of reps, right? Then I'm going to go to 2 plates, probably do that for another 5, kind of feel and assess where my strength level is for that day, right? Next, I'll probably hit 315 or 275, depending on how the day is going. I just want to start ripping weight, right? To where it's starting to feel good. I'm loosening my hips and everything opens up. It is opening up nicely, make sure that I don't have any back issues, and coming off of extremely pumped hamstrings and adductors, it's gonna feel incredible, right? So from once I hit 315, I'm gonna assess where I am for the day, right? So it'll get a good look for, let's say I might go 315 to 405, and then depending on how 405 feels, I might even bump up to 495 or 465. So again, that highly depends on the day, what the reps call for, right? So, let's say again, 8 to 10 hard reps. So, and then I'll finish with a Widowmaker. So I'd probably drop down to 2 plates and just crush reps somewhere north of 20 with no pause, right? So that's how that would look in that recommended video, as opposed to what I used to do, which was just come in 1 plate, 2 plate, 3 plate, 4 plate, 5 plate, and go. And, it's one of those things where if you watch that video all day long, the warm up of doing the leg curls first, adductors, then squatting, I'm going to feel so much better. It's going to lead to more productive sessions for not only leg growth, but also quad growth, knee health. So that's why it's beyond important, in my opinion, to get into activation of muscle before you're doing the power movement, right? So very similar to, say, chest training, where instead of starting with a barbell press for chest, whether that be on the flat or the incline, I want to do a dumbbell or a machine press first. And to me, this is, again, going to prime that muscle. Will at first you feel weaker or actually be weaker? Without a doubt. Most likely you will be, because you won't be used to, say, squatting with extremely pumped hamstrings and adductors. Once you get into a groove of that, and that may take for some people 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, that to me doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, in the long run, your squat will be actually up and exceeded what it should be, if you were working out of the beginning portion. So someone just asked, what are we talking about? So what I'm talking about is the difference in doing activation exercises before getting into your power movement. So for example, for legs, I was saying all day long, I would suggest doing lying leg curls or seated leg curls into adductors and into squats, as opposed to just starting out with straight squats and just trying to get as strong as you can. So that's what the moral of that story was. So I did a full video on this. I released it Friday. So if you want to see all the details of why I would do it that way, all day long. So yeah, that's what we have to do. So in my mind, all day long, activate the muscle, prime it, and then get into your power movement. All right, so let's get some of these questions here that have happened. All right, Chris, one of my clients. What's your advice to someone looking to start coaching? How much experience would you consider ready to start coaching non-competitors for lifestyle and weight loss? So for me, that was like a very natural transition, because I just got certified as a personal trainer, and then I started working in a big, huge commercial gym and started to train clients. From there, I did a bodybuilding show, and based upon my results and how people watched me transform within this gym, which was a huge gym, I had people just naturally come up to me and say, "Hey, I want that. Can you do this to me?" And how I ran that for the first year is I didn't charge anyone for contest prep. I just prepped them for shows and asked them to do weekly training with me, so personal training. So I would train them anywhere between 2 to 5, some people even 6 times a week for an hour to 2 hour sessions. And within that service, I supplied a diet, a cardio, and then a supplement program to get them on stage. And I did that for a full year before I ever charged someone for like out of pocket, just straight coaching. So that's how I kind of got in there. And based upon that first year of doing that, I had a handful of really good clients that did well and were walking billboards in that facility, who recommended new friends, and then just honestly going to shows with them, helped build that business. And then it was just off from there. So how much experience, like that kind of depends on the person. Like I was so deep into studying bodybuilding that I had a great knowledge base before I ever started coaching. And then I did my first 5 preps on my own. So it was one of those things where I wanted to learn by the fire, right? Like I had to learn my body. And then that way, when I eventually did hire Shelby Starnes to coach me, he was my first coach that I ever paid for. I needed to have data to give to him to know what was working. So again, how much experience it depends on your knowledge base going in. For someone who, honestly, here's what it comes down to, and most coaches won't tell you this. It's learning to manage people and personalities, not necessarily like the X's and O's of bodybuilding. Like the X's and O's of bodybuilding are, in my mind, like relatively easy as the whole, like as a macro. Where it gets tricky is when we learn to manage and mix emotions, and then where we're learning to build individual plans to suit that person's needs. Now, that's where you have to start tapping into a toolbox of education and knowledge and experience and hands-on with people. So that's where I had a big advantage, because I was a very successful personal trainer. I had clients nonstop all day, as long as I want them, with a waiting list from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. and even on the weekends. So I learned and ripped that Band-Aid off really, really quick. And my clients range from like your 70-year-old grandma who just needed to get moving and active to NFL players, because I was, again, very fortunate to be in a very large commercial gym. And listen, I wasn't scared to train people. I know for a lot of young guys and shit, I was 22 training guys getting ready for the NFL. I just had a big set of balls, man. I knew I could make them better. And they're like, "Hey, so you do that with him. Can you do that to me?" Yep. And then they just kind of like trickle in. So again, that's a huge different range, right? So everyone in between there. Now, my passion all day long was bodybuilding, physique enhancement, whether it be men or women. But what I quickly realized is I didn't really care what your goal was. Well, as long as you were willing to just to fucking attack it, like that's what fires me up the most. And still to this day, like people assume that my favorite clients are competitors, and that's just the people who like jive the best with me and have the best results with me are the ones who are just absolutely relentless with their just consistency. And that's with diet, nutrition, check-ins, their communication, like what they tell me, like all that good stuff, right? So to me, passion drives that ship and always will, which is again a very huge talking point that so many people don't understand, right? And something that I will always be drawn to, because another example, if we're still talking about personal training, like people would come in and I fucking hate small talk. Like I cannot stand it. So I always ask people like, what fires you up, man? Like what gets you out of bed in the morning? And when they told me what that was, I would just deep dive question, right? Like, 'cause I want to know anything and everything. I want to learn, right? So I had, 1 to 2 hours a session with them, and I'd want to know everything. Like, let's say you're in, like, I had a dude who I'll never forget, right? One of my very first good long-term clients. He was into LARPing, like serious. Like he'd come in beat to shit. And I wanted to know everything about it. And when he spoke about it, like his eyes just lit up. He was so pumped to tell me about it. He's like, you think this is cool? I'm like, fuck yeah, man, because you think it's cool. And to me, like whatever gets you fired up is like, gets me fired up. So in turn, like if I can learn to like bridge that gap between, okay, cool, this is what you want your end goal to be. I can learn how your brain works, and then we get you to the end goal of what you want. So all that with programming. All right, let's look at some of these other questions here because I've had a ton. So let's see. Someone says you're jacked. Thanks. Yep. It took many years to get there. Let's see. All right. Let's see. All right, when is Reptile coming out? So I originally had that plan to come out October 15th, and then prep hit me in the face, and then work got really insane, and I had a lot of travel coming up, or that I had to do for work, so that got pushed to the back burner. Honestly, it's fully done, like the nuts and bolts of it, and I've had 6 people test run it for me, and they have loved it. So right now it's in the editing process. So what that means is I'm just going in and plugging all the videos in, so it's really thorough. And then from there, I'll send it to the guy who does all my proofreading. After he's done with it, we send it to the lady who puts it all together for me and makes it look cool. Ian already has the cover done, which, oh my God, it's the coolest cover we've done yet. So I would assume probably, I'm hoping that I'll have a lot of time to work on it this coming week to get that all off to Charlie. Once Charlie gets it back to me, it'll go to Amanda. It usually takes her a week or two, and then we should be good to go. So I'm assuming probably 2 or 3 weeks. All right, let's see. Chris, do you think a carb cycle approach is needed for intermediate lifters, or can keeping macros and calories steady and only adjusting when progress slows yields great progress too? Yeah, I've seen them both work great. I tend to like to do carb cycling naturally. So what does that mean? Training days versus off days tends to me to be the best approach, because on an off day, I've never really believed that I need a boatload of carbohydrates. So let's say your base level of food on a training day is 300 grams of protein, 500 grams of carbs, and 50 grams of fat. What I like to do is on my off day, I'll cut the carbs in half, leave protein constant. So I'm looking at 300 grams of protein again, 250 grams of carbs, and then the fat I'll bump up to say 70 as a base point and see how your body reacts to that. So that's kind of how that looks there. And honestly, what I approve, would I call that like a crazy carb cycle? Absolutely not. That's what I would consider more of a natural carb cycle. Because I want to give my digestion a little bit of a break and get my insulin sensitivity, not always just getting hammered with 500 grams of carbs 7 days a week. I find guys tend to burn out too quickly on that. And those numbers are completely person to person. So I would highly recommend just simply kind of going by your feedback, where your diet is now would kind of be how I look to do that. So, yep, it's one of those things where you have to play around with diet. I can give you like overview brief recommendations, but until I like saw the whole picture of like what your pictures look like, what your training is like, because a lot of times people will say, well, Chris, like how can you or Dave or Chris or Keena like eat that many carbs and not get fat? And if you saw any of the four of us train, you would understand. Also know that on an off day, when I say rest, we rest. And that's something that's often missed and overlooked is the importance of rest days. And, to me, I've always felt, even though my food is pulled back on rest days, as the day progresses, I get fuller and harder because I'm allowing my body to recover. So, yep. Let's see. Another person just asked when Reptile is coming out. I would assume 2 to 3 weeks. But I will say this. I promised or made a promise to John when I started releasing these programs that all day long I would ensure that the quality is better than just being on schedule for a release date. So I'm pretty hyper obsessive with making them perfect. All right, so let's see here. I'm 71 in carnivore. All right, cool. Heck yeah. If that's what you're into, that's what you want to do, like by all means go for it. It's definitely a great approach for longevity. It's not something I would personally want to do right now with my goal to get huge, but obviously all of our goals are different. So again, whatever works for you, what is best to follow. Obviously a lot of health measures would drastically improve with that. And listen, you're going to find a much more simplistic diet. So it's probably really easy for you to adhere to. So heck yeah, keep at it. Can you talk about working through injuries? Because I really feel like I fall behind progress if I take way too much time off. Can you work through it, and how would you work through it? Okay, that honestly depends on what the injury is. If I have a broken finger, I'm going to keep training. If I have a completely fucked up spine with 3 herniated discs, I'm probably not going to train. But to me, it's all about what you can work through. I will always think an active body in motion is going to be better than one that's sedentary. So let's say, for example, you just tore your pec, your left pec to be specific. I'm going to hammer my legs 2 to 3 days a week. And then I'm still going to train the right side of my body, all single arm, without a doubt. And honestly, if I could get away with some arm training on the left side, I would do it. There's been multiple studies that show that if you train the non-injured side, the healing process goes way faster. So I'm a big believer in that. And I like to be in the gym and be active and be moving. And as long as the doctor doesn't say, hey, don't do anything in the gym, I'm going to go lift. I'm going to do cardio. I'm going to stay on a meal plan. I'm going to hammer my health supplements. And to me, like all of those are positive for injury healing. And that's exactly how I work through it. Honestly, on the other side of that coin of how would you work through it, obviously, I'm just going to be really smart and deliberate with exercise selection. So if an exercise hurts in a negative way to the injured area, you can't do it. So let's say, for example, you tore that pec and you're trying to do back squats, and every time you get onto the straight bar, like it hurts. Right? Let's look to do a yoke bar or a spider bar or a Smith machine, or not even squat. Like let's do a hack squat or a leg press or leg extensions, leg curls, lunges, all that stuff, right? So if we're looking to work around an injury, anything that's going to cause negative pain or potential of re-injury, I cannot do it. So that's exactly how I would do that. To me, also just being positive, and for me, moving in a direction is way better than just sitting around eating a bunch of bullshit and being depressed. So yeah, coming from someone who has had 3 stints of where they've screwed their back up so aggressively that you thought there was going to be no way out, and that's me. I can tell you this, I rested for 3 days after the last one, and then I got direct into ab work and walking on a treadmill and riding a bike, meaning like a Peloton. And because I found that when I injured my back all 3 times, the first thing that went was my ab strength. And that's just because it needed to be stronger. So I started just laying on the floor doing vacuum work and crunches because that didn't cause any negative pain to my erector or my spine. So I started doing that, and then I started walking. Then I started building in mobility drills for my hips, ankles, calves, quads, hamstrings. And then I just started to slowly work back into it. Then I could start doing some hanging leg raises, and that was also giving me spinal decompression. So we're moving in the right direction. So then I was like, okay, cool. Now I can go in the gym and do all chest supported things. So chest supported rowing, machine pressing for chest, light dumbbell work for arms, cable push downs with a belt on. For legs, I just had to stick to a leg press and a leg extensions and leg curls and seated calf raises, things that aren't spinal loaded. And then I just slowly started working back in, adding things, trying things. If things caused negative pain, I removed it. If things felt great, I kept at it. And what I found is the more I moved, the more I begin to get blood flow, positive endorphin release, eating meals. Like, it was just great for me, both mentally and physically. So that's how I worked through that. All right. Let's see. You're about as big as a house. Thanks. It took many years to get here. Favorite way to add weight to BOLA gains? Honestly, this is going to sound funny, but I don't. Okay, this is my favorite way. Here you go. Make a Ninja Creamy and dump it over it. That is the goat. All day long. I had that post lift today. So I'll make either a chocolate or a vanilla Ninja Creamy, and then I'll dump that over a scalding hot bowl of BOLA gains with crust and sea salt. Delicious. By far the best way to do it. Let's see here. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. No, I am definitely not gay. I am fully married to my wife, who is 100% woman. So, yeah, that's an interesting, fun question, but no, 100% straight, sorry. And my eyes are for only her and her only. So we've been together for 16 years total. All right, so another cool topic that all day long I feel like needs to be addressed. Let's see, good grief, do you even go to the gym? No, I don't. Yes. I have 1,000 videos on YouTube that will show you if I go to the gym or not. So yeah. All right, so a good question I got earlier in the comment section that I didn't get to address was, how important is strength in terms of building lean muscle tissue? Is it a strength game? And the guy even went on to say, like, you know, obviously powerlifters aren't the most muscular humans on the planet, but they're the strongest. What's the correlation there? So to me, and I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible because I only have 8 minutes left of this live before I'm going to go eat a meal. What I want to think about here is we have to build a base level of strength. What we want to do is, when I'm thinking about foundational movements, we have to get stronger at them, right? And when we lift, even as a bodybuilder, we're going to get stronger at the lifts, right? Just naturally, if you're eating, training, working hard, it's going to happen. So what we want to think about is, no, I'm not going to be a strength athlete, but at the same time, there's going to be lifting metrics that I'm going to try to achieve, right? So let's say we're working through an incline barbell press. If week 1, I'm able to do 225 for, say, a good 8, ideally in 6 months, I want to be pressing at least 275 for a same 8, where the form looks identical, but I'm up 50 pounds, right, on that lift. And it may not be as big or as drastic. Let's say it's 245. If we're doing that, we're moving in the right direction. So if we keep on that path and say 2 to 3 years, we'll be pressing 265, 365, maybe 405. And by doing that, a stronger muscle will be a bigger muscle, right? So when people hear me say that, it's like, oh, Chris, like, that's not always the case. But if you're working in bodybuilding rep ranges, which to me is like 8 reps to 30 reps, all day long, if my form is getting better and I'm developing a stronger mind-muscle connection, the muscle is going to be bigger if I have more weight on the bar, right? So let's take curls. If I'm curling, say, 25-pound dumbbells for a good set of 10, and I get to 40s with a good set of 10, do you think my biceps will be bigger with the same form, but it's just as good as my muscle connection? The answer is yes. So that's what I really encourage everyone to think about out there. Like, obviously there'll be a peak of strength, right? Like, there won't be a point where I continue to say curl the 100-pound dumbbells, but there will be an improvement, especially through the beginner, intermediate, and beginning advanced level of bodybuilding. So all day long, like, that's what I really encourage everyone to do, is to push strength as long as you're staying on the target muscle. Serious question. If you get it so big, is it difficult to wipe your ass? It's definitely harder, but that's why we have a bidet, right? That's why I have a bidet in my house. Pretty simple there. You're very welcome, logic, for the logic and the knowledge. I'm happy to always share it. Are you on steroids? I'll let you guess. Jesus Christ. You gotta laugh, right? At that question. So, anyways, back to the strength versus pump. I like to do both, right? Like, there's no reason you can't do this both in the same session. If exercise 1 is about activating the muscle, starting to get a pump in it, exercise 2 is going to be a progressive overload movement where you really try to get stronger at it, not only with your top set but also your back off. Then we go into like extreme pump mode where I want to get the muscle as full and as big and round and juicy as humanly possible. What the TikTok kids say is edema maxing. That's what I want. And then I want to finish the session with a stretching movement. So, stretching movements, say for chest, are going to be a fly of some sort, high cable crossovers. Stretching for hamstrings are going to be like an RDL. For quad, we're going to have to do a maximal. To me, where I maximally stretch my quads all day long, we're going to be in a hack squat. Because I can bury it, put my hamstrings on my calves, get a great stretch. So I'll do a hard set of, say, 10 to 15, and then immediately get off of it and go into a hard, like, singular quad stretch where my training partner will push my heel towards my glute and really stretch that quad out. So, yeah, that's kind of how I like to cycle the training sessions. And that way I can get the itch of progressive overload, but also the muscle building effects of the activation, and then the pump, and then the stretch work. So that's how John always set his stuff up, and that's how I've built a majority of my training programs that I've designed since he's been gone. So, yep. Is it normal that my BMI is a 25.9, but I still have a lean/skinny build? I don't really go on BMI. I go on more of a visual look as well as a body fat percentage. That's a much more accurate. So the reason I say that is if you take my weight now, which is 254 at 5'10", it's going to say that I'm extremely overweight. I still have abs. I have veins in my quads and my arms. So I don't really go by BMI. So I would go way much more by a visual look than what your BMI chart says. You laugh, but you look steroided out. Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, so when you begin to go down that route of what your BMI is, I always like to think about, we start with nutrition. If you're looking to change your composition, it's going to be step 1. We look at cardio, step 2, and then the intensity of your training and workouts. So all day long, that's the 3 areas I would focus on. Drop sets, are they good? I go for a lot of reps at the end of that particular exercise. What do you think of that? I love drop sets. They just feel great. To me, it's a great way, if you don't have a training partner, to continue a set or extend the set. So to me, all day long, what I want to think about is if I'm looking to push intensity and increase force production on the muscle, make my training capacity go north, drop sets are a great way to do it, especially if you don't have a training partner and can't do assisted or forced reps. And even if I do have a training partner, I love drop sets because, I think we've all finished like a hard set of like 8 to 10 and feel like there's like more left in the tank. And instead of waiting to do another set or do a back off, just drop that pin or pull a plate off and just crank. It feels really good to me. And again, I'm an old school bodybuilder where drop sets were a weekly occurrence. So I always have kept those in. All right, last question here. Split recommendation for someone who only works out 3 days in a row each week. PPL, upper lower arms, full body. I would do push-pull legs if you can only train 3 days a week all day long. That's what I would do. It just makes the most sense logically, as well as splitting up the course of your week. Now, let's say, for example, you have a weakness or an area that's drastically behind, then we may have some other discussions about what to attack. I've never liked the idea of a full body approach. An upper lower arms to me seems kind of like a waste of a day, because a lower body day I have no issue with, but an upper body day where you're having to fully attack chest, shoulders, and back, it seems like a pretty damn overwhelming for me. I mean, especially if you're considering you're gonna do 2 heavy rows, a pull down, and some sort of hip hinge for a back. I guess you could always put your hip hinge on your leg day, do 2 heavy rows, 2 pull downs, and do 2 heavy press and a fly. And then for shoulders, do a side delt and a rear delt. That would be a way you could do it. And then train arms if your arms are really horrible and you're looking to bring them up. So those would be probably the 2 ways you could do that or set that up. Just to me, that upper body day would still seem very volume heavy and taxing, considering arms being so easy on, say, the central nervous system. So, and plus, if you only have 3 days, to me, you have 4 days to rest and recover. So I'd much rather go push-pull legs. Seems like a more logical approach for me, so, and how I would do that. All right, guys and girls, thanks for watching and for the questions. Hopefully that makes training and everything a little bit more clear and give you something to listen to on a Saturday. So until next time, like, share, subscribe. Cris Edmonds TV.